Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Live 605. We're finally back in our regular time slot. Some of you have been tuning in at 3, others at 3:30. I'm terribly sorry about that. In fact, I'm sorry. It may have been a delightful experience for you to have tuned in at 3 or 3:30 and not seen me there. That's the nature of self-deprecating humour, I guess. You're watching us live through Facebook, through the Facebook page of the Stray Whisker, through my own personal page, if you're so inclined. And of course, we're streaming live through YouTube, through Shave the Man, and of course, Stray Whisker TV, as well as Twitter. Yes, Twitter has flipped and flopped, and they've decided to reinstate their live streaming thing. So if Twitter's your thing and you're on it, welcome. If you're also new to here, put new down below and we will try and change all of that. We'll go from you being new to being a seasoned viewer and participator of Live 605. Boy, have we got a show for you this afternoon, or this evening, I should say. In fact, look, it's afternoon somewhere in the world. That is a fact. Longevity, that's what we're going to talk about today. There was a post in the Shave the Man group earlier this morning. I awoke to that and I was rather distressed to see that one of our members had decided to put all their their aftershaves that no longer had that robust scent that they had come to enjoy down the sink. Of course, this was a statement, a very clear statement saying that, look, my stuff don't smell the way it used to, and I'm getting rid of it. And of course, then a number of people chimed in and said, look, something's not quite right there. I have vintage aftershaves. There's nothing wrong with them. I have aftershaves in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and there doesn't seem to be anything untoward or nothing. These particular products haven't degenerated or disintegrated or evolved into something else. Usually some products evolve into mold. Yes, interesting. Anyway, as I said, if you're new, put a cheerio below, and I shall acknowledge the fact that you have taken the time out of your lives to watch this live, no less. So, we are also going to cover some questions. I want to ask you about your experiences with longevity and products. But what I'm going to do today is I'm not just going to cover aftershaves. I'm just going to talk about most products generally, and I'm going to finish off with aftershaves. So we're going to cover things like blades, razors, be they straight razors or safety razors, and it'll be one of those. It'll be one of those things, and then we'll finally finish off with colognes and aftershaves. Oh, I can see that Brad is online. Hello, Brad. Hope you're well, sir. In fact, it was you that prompted this particular live. I was going to do something else, but I thought this is a very important. This is a very, very important point, and I've heard a number of people make similar claims and statements about their colognes or aftershaves or EDTs or puff harms not smelling as good or smelling at all as they used to. So this is something that we're going to cover today. Con, hello, how are you? Nice to see you on the live again, sir. It's very nice of you to join us. You've become a bit of a regular, I hear. And Con, as I should say, has decided to transition to traditional wet shaving, and I have photographic evidence. And let me tell you, he's looking really good. I mean, he looked good before, but now he's on point. Thank you for joining us, Con. That's very kind of you. So what we'll talk about, firstly, is that when you acquire all this stuff that will assist you in your shaving journey, soon in the piece you'll say, okay, where do I keep this stuff? Where do I keep my razor blades? How do I store my razors? Is there a particular way that I should look after my brushes? The brush is a contentious one as well, because I've had a number of debates. Yes, I've debated on brushes, believe it or not, shaved brushes, about whether you should hang them up or whether just leaving them upright, in a nice place that has enough airflow will suffice, and so on and so forth. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we will also talk about, as I say, shaving soaps and creams, and finally we will move into that aftershave nightmare. Clear bottle in the sun. How else would you store things? Yes, Mark, that would be fantastic. A clear bottle in the sun. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. That is a recipe for disaster. Mr. Goodshave, good morning from the UK. Nice to see you on the live, sir. As I said, people are joining us through Shave the Man, but also through Stray Whisker TV. I'm spreading myself thin. I'm spreading myself like Nutella. Hi, Sophie. Nice to see you on the live again. I'm chuffed that you'd made it twice in a row. It's very, very nice of you to do that. Okay, so let's just talk about a few things firstly. I want to talk about razor blades firstly. Now, razor blades, one of those things, once you take them out of their waxy wrapper, they're going to get used. And generally speaking, anywhere from 3 to 7, possibly 12. I know there are people that have taken them for 32 uses. There is a person on YouTube that has gone for the Guinness Book of Records, and he's done multiples of 10. We've spoken about that before. My thing is that with razor blades, if you're not using them, obviously just keep them in the tuck, in the cardboard. Just keep them exactly where they as they arrive to you. Don't take them out of their waxy wrapper, of course, until you're ready to use them. But of course, that's common sense. We're now talking about what happens how do you store these when they're like all together? Do you keep them in the bathroom? Do you not? Whatever. I do, but I have found that this silica gel is your friend. If I can just get that, there it is there. The stuff that, I don't know anyone that has attempted to eat silica gel. You usually get these in electronics and things, and it is basically a desiccant, which means it keeps things nice and dry, and the blades will love you forever, and they can last for a long, long time. So I just keep these in a box, like a Tupperware type box, and I throw in a few of these, and my blades go in there. Some people keep them in a sandwich bag, those Glad wrap bags or whatever they're called in your neck of the woods, and that is enough. Depends on how much you love your blades. I know there are people out there that are mad for blades. In fact, they have vintage blades and they want to keep them in tip-top condition. They wish to use them, but one of the things that they need to keep out of the blades is moisture. This is a common theme in today's live. Moisture is your friend in wet shaving, but it can also be the enemy, and we'll look at that. So basically what I do is I just keep them in the box until I'm ready to use them. Of course, then when I'm ready to use them, I take them out of the wax wrapper and we're good to go. But when I'm storing them in bulk, I keep them in a box with these silica desiccant gels. That is it. Right, when it comes to brushes, so if you've got lots and lots of brushes, and I'm sure there are people out there that do, I happen to have a lot of brushes that I've acquired over the years. If it's a brush that I'm not using, then I guess it doesn't really matter how I display it or store it. There is a caveat to that, and we will discuss that shortly. But if there is one that's in a common rotation, then that is the brush that I'm interested in talking about now. Yeah, I know, we're all guilty. We're all guilty of it, Sophia. Steve Carter, Steve Sarah here. Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you on the live. It's nice to have you. Look, you may have been on lives and not admitted that you were there. I can understand that. I'm interested in your thoughts on storing AC blades. I seem to find I get a lot of rust or oxidation on them. Yes, we will talk about that. Look, as I say, collect as many of these little things as you can and keep them in there with the blades. That's the first thing. But we will talk about blade. Hello, Stuthi. A blade that is actually in use. Okay. If you shave every other day, then that blade, essentially what I do is I just loosen the safety razor, and you can hear that rattling there. I just let it sit there loosely so as it can aerate and dry out. If you're a person that shaves once every 2 or 3 weeks, I would not recommend leaving a blade in your safety razor. It will. start to, because you've got the contact of two different types of metals come into contact, and there will be some rusting that may occur and staining. So I think we spoke about this before. You can actually dip it in alcohol and that will dry the thing out nicely, and then you're good to go. But of course, I'm mindful of the fact that most people keep their safety razors in the bathroom, which is a wet, humid environment. So look, generally speaking, with razor blades, it's not really that much of an issue, right? Or issue, I should say. So if you're not shaving frequently, I would probably take the blade out. And there are some interesting products on the market that are magnetic that you can put the blade on and have them out of harm's way. And then when you're ready to use it, put it back in there. Most people will tend to leave the blade in the safety razor that they're utilizing, and they'll have no issues there. There'll be none at all. Right, so does oil help with long-term open storage? Obviously, I'm changing all the time, but I've often wondered. Yes, it does. But oil, generally, and Sophia's a barber, a spray is very good that way because you can hold it at a distance. You can spray it at places, a nice even film on the blade, particularly and especially with straight razors. So this is my Ralph Ost. This is always oiled, and that keeps it from tarnishing and rusting and pitting, and they call it all sorts of things, devil's spit. So you've got to be very careful. Oil does help. Let's finish the brushes. So generally speaking, if I'm using, let's say I was using these three brushes in a common rotation, I would just have them out of harm's way and sitting in a stand. Now, the debate that I spoke about before about whether, it makes no difference whether you store it this way or whether you store it that way, the brush will dry. And it's negligible, the amount of water that's in the brush, because we're saying that if you keep them upside down, the water will wick away because of gravity and it'll keep the brush dry. I find the most important thing to do, so let's take a synthetic, is I just wring it out as much as possible. And if imagine that my hand is a towel, I just run it on there and try and remove as much water. So obviously I give it a good flick and then remove as much water as I can using a towel. And then of course, synthetic will dry very quickly. In fact, it's almost dry to the touch in about 10, 15 minutes. So they're particularly good, and that's why people like them. With animal hair brushes, boar brushes and horse brushes, and also badger brushes, the one thing you need to be mindful is that you need to try and keep them as dry as possible. Please don't use a hairdryer to dry them. That's not good, because what happens over time is that you destroy the knot. You destroy the glue that's in the base of the knot, and you don't want to subject this. It's animal hair to excessive heat just because you want to get it to dry. It's better to allow it to air dry. Now, whether you like hanging them upside down or having them sit, like if they're soaking wet and you have them sitting like that, it's not a good idea because the water will just sit in the base of it. But if you dry them as much as you possibly can and then put them upside down or even leave them the same way, it's fine. Again, if you're shaving fairly frequently, if you're a regular shaver, then that's not much of an issue. Right, so that's brushes. The razor, you really only want to get it out of harm's way and out if there are children in the house, away from children. If there's a spouse that wants to get stuck into your razors and you want to hide them, that's another issue and may also require counselling. There may be some deep dives into counselling of some description if they're wanting to get into your razors, just saying. Same sort of thing. This is not a shameless plug for the triple collared stand, but it kind of is in a way. It just sits in there like so. And this particular one takes 3 razors and 3 brushes, and it just keeps it safe. We like it because it keeps the bottom of the razor in contact with the collar as well as the top, and you're done. If you collect vintage razors, and I know there's someone out there now watching that is a vintage aficionado, then they, I would suggest, should be kept in their original box and kept out of harm's way. I reckon these desiccant, these crystals are your friend. I'm really going to show you something now which will blow your mind, I'm hoping. this is where I keep my banana bread. No, it's not where I keep banana bread. It's see if you can get. I don't know if they're available where you are, but I'm sure you can go to large department stores and you'll find one of these things. They're designed for, I don't know, lettuce or vegetables or something. They have a little rack in them, and this is where I keep all my straight razors here. But this is the key. You can buy these at hardware stores. See if you can get that. You can just get my noggin out of there. And they change colour, obviously, when you need to whack them in the microwave oven to reinvigorate them. And I put these in the base of that, and then I throw that on, and I put things like my straight razors on there, as well as my blades. I mean, I've got one for blades as well, and that keeps it nice and dry, and I'm not going to get any rusting or tarnishing. And so I hope that helps with the earlier question. I would just try and get as many of them. You can get these industrial, I mean, that's in a nice little bag like that will keep that environment nice and dry. So I oil the blade with a dedicated oil. Sometimes I use inox, which is a food grade one, which is okay, in other words, to have close to your face. And I just spray it lightly, put it back into its into this box, which happens to be called a coffin. Yeah, it's a coffin. And then I place it in the large banana bread Tupperware thing, receptacle, call it what you will. And that keeps the product nice and dry and safe, and we get no tarnishing or pitting or any of those other things. It's time for me to hydrate. So, do we have any questions, comments here? Who have we got? Gillette Fat Boy. Yes, well, a Gillette Fat Boy. Now, where do you keep your Gillette Fat Boy, Brad? Do you keep it in its original box? I know that Mark Spencer, what he doesn't know about Gillette Fat Boys is not worth knowing. Okay, so he's your man if you're interested in that. Right, when it comes to shaving soaps and creams, if you want longevity, so with artisan type soaps and also hard soaps, then just allowing them to dry, in other words, just leaving the lid off them and letting them dry, is pretty important. With creams, now, and I'm talking particularly about creams that come in a tub, those are a little more problematic because there is a tendency for people to want to take their brush and load their brush directly from the tub of, I don't know, Taylorsville, Bond Street or Trueford Hill or GF Trumper or whatever brand it is you're using. I would not recommend that. I would recommend you take the product out of the plastic the plastic tub that it comes in and either place it in the brush itself or smear it on your bowl or even smear it on your face and then build the lather with your brush there. Please do not introduce water into cream, into tubs of cream. This is critical. Water, doesn't matter how clean or sanitized you feel your bathroom is, water contains microbes, and those microbes love a cream. And I've seen some pretty horrific examples of where they love it so much they've set up residents there, and in fact, it's almost like cities, entire towns have been set up in tubs of creams. Now, it doesn't matter what brand it is, they love a cream, and they will, you'll be very careful. If you do like doing the whole schmeary thing, you have to make sure that you leave that open. So allow it to dry as much as possible. Dry soaps as a baseline will produce a much better lather than ones that are already wet and slushy and mushy, I have found. And I'd like to hear about your experiences too, if that's been the case with you. Shaving creams in a tube, not so much a problem. You dispense as required. An amount comes out of the tube. The rest of it is fairly well sealed in that environment, and you should be okay. But these large tubs it can go from being a shaving cream to a Petri dish. We don't want that. It becomes a real problem. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, me to have my espresso and to talk about colognes and aftershaves. This is a topic that Brad and I'm grateful for him for doing this, brought up this morning, Australian time. What's happening with colognes and aftershaves and liquidy, smelly things that we put on our thing? First and foremost, and this is common sense, everything has a shelf life. Everything has a use-by date. And that use-by date is based on a number of assumptions. The first assumption is that use-by date will generally take the product to that date and perhaps a little bit beyond, provided you're not sitting on that product or putting it under an electric blanket or putting it in the freezer for a while or doing really, really silly things with it. In other words, taking it beyond the parameters of normal use, whatever normal is, of course. Then if somebody says that this cologne will last you, or this particular fragrance will last you 3 to 4 years, then you can safely assume that it will last 3 to 4 years if you don't leave it in the sun, or if you somehow mistakenly put it in the freezer and then allowed it to thaw out, although alcohol doesn't freeze, but you get the drift, you know what I'm saying. So given those sets of parameters, those and normal use, fair use, the product should last. That's a given. I mean, that's with everything. One of the things that was mentioned in the group was that there were some gentlemen that said they never ever had a problem with their vintage aftershaves. Oh, look, I've got an aftershave from 1954 and it's doing very, very well. I've got aftershaves from the 60s and 70s and it smells as good as it used, as it did the day that it was produced, and so on and so forth. There is something to take into consideration here. Are they still producing aftershaves the way they used to in 1954 today? Have the ingredients changed? Has the method of manufacture changed? So that's the first thing you need to consider. This whole saying they don't make them like they used to perhaps holds true in this instance. So that's the first point. The second point is Mark Spencer says, but Con, I've got vintage product that is a number of years old and it's fine. That's right, you do. You do, Mark. And I've seen a part of your collection and it was eye-watering. It's eye-watering. It's incredible. If ever you get a chance to see, maybe Mark should do another travelling exhibition or something. He's got some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful vintage stuff. So that's the first thing. They don't make them like they used to, but that doesn't explain why you bought something 2 years ago or a year ago, doesn't smell like anything, or even worse still, doesn't actually smell unpleasant. What's gone on there? Well, we need to know, and this is something that I know sounds like common sense, but you need to make mention of that. When you buy a fragrance, you're at a store, you buy this wonderful fragrance, you think, wow, this smells fantastic, I'm really loving this. I'll buy this. Of course, you're using a test strip. You're not wearing it. Okay, that was the first mistake. You should put it on and walk around with it. 2 or 3 months later, or maybe a year later, you think, this doesn't quite smell the same. What's going on here? I thought this was, the thing. Well, it might be that you like displaying your products in such a way that, you should be, part of the World of Interiors magazine. Now, unless you're using these products on a regular basis, and there are products that we use frequently, we use them all the time, your shampoos, conditioners, moisturizers, toothpaste, all that sort of stuff, then that stuff's fine on a little shelf in a bathroom. But when we're talking about fragrances, these quite often contain volatile substances, and this is why you'll find them in amber bottles or bottles that kind of look a little bit more mysterious. You can't see the product. There's a number of reasons that happens, of course, but it's just to keep light away from them, because light is the enemy here, as well as this sort of temperature fluctuations. And of course, there are some parallels between distilling and the wine industry, why they like keeping things in a cellar. It's a constant environment. The variables are all controlled. We can keep a fairly constant temperature, and the wine, in fact, in the case of wine and whiskey, will mature and develop characters that weren't there when it was younger. And that's, I guess, where the analogy sort of ends when it comes to fragrances. So the first thing I would do is I would be mindful of where I keep my fragrances. Personally, I do not keep any EDTs, parfums, fragrances, aftershave splashes in the bathroom. I used to. I no longer do that. So they're completely out of the bathroom. They're close to the bathroom, but they're not in the bathroom. Don't put them under the sink. Don't put them in that little vanity thing there. Don't even put them in your shave mirror. Unless it's a product that you use consistently, in fact, daily, and you're going to get through it, then I would keep those well away from that environment. Why? Humidity, fluctuations in temperature, and generally light. These are the three things that most bathrooms, I know there are exceptions, most bathrooms contain, they're usually light, bright, and sort of, there's a lot of light there, which is the enemy of all fragrances. Humidity, well, that's fairly evident. You're having a shower, the whole place steams up. Even if you've got Boeing 747 extractor fans, you're still not going to be able to get rid of that humidity effectively. I would keep those out of there. And then, of course, fluctuations in temperature. The bathroom can and is the coldest place in the house, but it can also become the hottest place in the house. It goes through enormous fluctuations. Please remove your fragrances and aftershave splashes from the bathroom if you can. If you're going to shave and you know you're going to use a particular, go and get it, then bring it into the bathroom, use it, and then get it out of there again. Light and temperature with me, I like my room warm. Yeah, okay. Well, see, there it is, Brad. That may have something to do with it. Right. These other things that I'm going to mention, perhaps a little bit more, may raise an eyebrow. I don't know. I would need to conduct a study of my own and, conduct a longitudinal study on whether this in fact is true. But these are basic principles which I think are worth noting. If you have purchased an expensive fragrance, I know it's a bit of a vibe to sort of, leave it up there and show it off. Please don't do that. Keep it in its original box. Keep it in its original box if you can. That environment is great because they've spent a lot of money. The company that's put together this thing has made it look very nice and it's all part of the experience. I understand all that. But it also, if you think about it, has been designed for that fragrance to travel, to be moved around, to be set down in a certain place. Keep it in the box. Don't take it out of the box if you can. The other thing is, make sure you put the lid back on. I know that sounds silly. You think, hang on, there's a little nozzle. What's the lid? Why? This is why I try not to buy testers. I don't buy testers. I want the lid. I want it all sealed, right? So make sure that you keep it in its original packaging. Now, this is why I also don't buy, personally, 300 ml tobacco. I'll never use it. I'll never, ever, ever get through it. Some of you would never use it anyway, but I'm just saying I buy smaller amounts which I can consume, and then I buy another one. And that's how it works with me. Smaller, tiny morsels of exquisiteness, right? So that's the first thing. Keep the lid, keep them in their original container. The other thing is, if you know that it's a scent that you're not using frequently because it's a special scent, it's something that you're not going to wear every day, it's not your daily driver, as we call them, then I know this is going to sound really crazy, I not only keep it in its original box, but then I put it in another similar to this Tupperware thing. I put it in there and I just keep it covered, right? And I have found that the stability then, because this is what this is about. This is about stability. The product, when a product goes off, it has reached a point where it has now become destabilized, it's oxidized, and that can be a problem. So where do I keep my fragrances? I keep them in the bottom of the wardrobe, right? Underneath my woolly coats. That's where I keep it. Low, not high. Why? Keep your fragrances high, you pick it up or something happens, you drop it, you're shaking the fragrance around. Not a good thing. What does that do? Introduces bubbles. What are bubbles? Air. What's air? Part of oxidation. Nyah. Now, I know that sounds like we're splitting hairs, but all the literature would suggest, and all the research that's been done on this would suggest, do not shake fragrance bottles. We'll talk about aftershaves in a minute. Do not shake vigorously because you want to get a bit of a, you want to bring out the whiff. Oh, this is great. Let me just shake it. Please don't do it, okay? It's not a cocktail, right? It's not a cocktail. Don't shake it. hold it away from you and just depress the nozzle and you're done. What you're doing with the nozzle, obviously, is you're introducing air into the fragrance, which will then help push this up. There's a difference of atmospheric pressure, and the rest could sound like a very boring science lesson, which I won't get into. I don't want to go back to science just yet. So, no agitation. Dark, dry place. Keep it there. If you know you're going to use it today, if this is the thing that you wanted to use, go and get it, use it, and then get rid of it. Go and put it back where it belongs in the cupboard. And that will ensure that your stuff's not going to go off. Decanting, I'll talk about briefly as well. There's this whole craze of decanting things and putting things in another, or using a puffer bottle, and it looks nice on the vanity. I have a perfume bottle. Please don't do that. They're like putting whiskey in a whiskey decanter. Unless you're going to consume the entire amount in a very short space of time, don't do it. Okay? Because if you're putting it in one of these you're putting it in a glass container with an atomizer, you're asking for trouble. Okay? The other thing you're asking for is for air to enter into the equation. I'm going to show you something briefly here. We have two fragrances. I don't know if you can see them here. It doesn't matter which is. Now, one, there's slightly more in this one than there is in that one. If this one came down to halfway or a quarter of the way, I would ensure that I finished that a lot sooner. So, similarly, the same sort of thing with other alcoholic products. Once you've reached a quarter of the bottle, don't keep it and think, oh, yeah, I'm really loving this. So just use it, because it will not be the same going forward. Why? There's a lot more air in there now. Air heats up and cools down a lot easier. You're creating an unstable environment within the bottle, and you've heard the rest. I've explained that to you before. Now, with aftershaves, does splashing, shaking an aftershave do anything? Let's talk firstly about commercially available aftershaves like Old Spice and all these other things. Those products, generally speaking, have things like castor oil in them. And if you wish to mix the castor oil with the aromatics, I can understand the reasoning for doing that. This is what you do with salad dressing, isn't it? Surely, if the French and Italian salad dressing, you want the two things to mix, then you would do that. Generally speaking, you're using a lot more aftershave per mil than you are if you're using a fragrance. So you're probably going to get through it a lot more faster. That's the first thing. And secondly, there are all sorts of other things in the aftershave which are providing you with soothing qualities. There might be aloe vera in it. There could be rose water in it. There could be all sorts of hydrosols in there, which you wish to bring out. And if it sits, you'll see that, and quite often, particularly with a lot of artisan products, you'll see they settle. There are strata, layers, and you need to mix those up. And I think that is understandable. But having said that, I do not have an artisan aftershave in my possession that I've had for longer than a year. I try and get through them. Right? I use them. If I like it, I'll use it. Otherwise, that's it. Mr. G Shave, there are some aftershave splashes that are meant to be agitated before use. Yes, absolutely. And Nivea, absolutely. So the Nivea one, I particularly like the Nivea Balm. I give that a good shake. But in that instance, you'll see that those things have more restorative properties rather than this, oh, look, don't I smell amazing? This is why it's hard to sort of confuse the cologne, and you shouldn't really be lumping the two together. But I'm really going to Brad's point of having these things go off if you've got them sitting there. So please, first thing, remove all fragrances from windowsills. That's a given. Please remove them from your bathroom. I know it might be your space and your thing, or your den, or whatever it is, but try and get them away from there. I know it sounds crazy. Store them low, and store them in a dark, dry place. And they should last longer. If you know you're going to have a particular fragrance for a fairly long time, in other words, you use it, but you're not using it that often, I try and keep it, and I keep all my fragrances in their box. And it's not because I'm some sort of crazy collector that says, oh, look, I've got a mint condition box. I'm not going to flip them. I'm not going to sell them. It's just that I know that when they sit cradled in there, they're not going to move around, and they're just neat and tidy, and they are where they're supposed to be. And you should get a lot more out of them. So, oxygen is the enemy. Heat is the enemy. Humidity is the enemy. If you mindful of those things and keep those fragrances away from that area, they should last. Are they going to last as long as vintage scents? That remains to be seen. I get a sense that they probably won't. For example, if you've got an old formulation Shulton Old Spice and it still smells amazing and it's 26 years old, I don't know what an Old Spice that was made 6 months ago is going to smell like in 26 years. Of course, it could also be the receptacle. I mean, now they come in plastic containers. It's all about the bottom line and all the rest of it. So they're the things that you probably, that we should all think about. And as I say, I'm guilty as charged. I've stored things incorrectly. I've wanted to look at them and say, oh, wow, look. And quite often I would joke, people say, what are you wearing today? And I say, third bottle from the left. Yeah, work that one out. Eh? It was a bit of a flex, but it's silly. It's silly. You're throwing money away because things are just, you're just wasting away. That's it. There is a question. I saw a question here about keeping things in the fridge. Let's talk about that. Ladies are accustomed to do this. They do it quite a bit. Can you keep things in the fridge? Sure you can. Is it going to change? Is it going to change anything in terms of thing? Yes, it will. Some fragrances don't like the cold. Some fragrances, because are best served sort of in an optimal temperature range. Don't think that because you've put Chanel No. 5 in the fridge, you're going to get another 12 months or whatever out of it. That may not necessarily be the case. The other thing about the fridge is you're constantly opening and closing the door. There's vibrations and all sorts of things. In fact, there's a whole area of study on vibration and wines, red wines. Wines need to be kept in a cool, fairly constant temperature with no vibration, because it obviously messes with the sediment in the wine. That creates a reaction. It doesn't allow the wine to, the fully expressed flavors of the wine to come out. It's not the same with fragrances. I'm not suggesting that, but it's not really a stretch to see that if you're changing things, if you're putting things in those environments, those sort of fairly, either very, very hot or very, very cold environments, that you're not getting the product that was intended by the maker of that product. So that's something to sort of keep in mind. Now, do we have any other questions? Where are we? I'm a soap dryer and a cream wetter because I'm done. Oh, no, you're not, Brad. Come on. You've got to try these things out. But I was saddened to hear that you were tipping things down the sink. Anyway, Dave James, I just thought everyone was like me and keeps their stuff in cardboard boxes, scattered in the car. Yeah, well, there you go. See? Dave, look, there's something in that. I mean, I know people say, oh, get rid of these boxes, there's clutter. No, there'd be more clutter if there weren't boxes, let me tell you. Boxes have straight edges and can be put into places quite neatly. But please remember, those fluctuations in temperature are a problem. So the other thing I saw someone ask here, because there's a lot of things coming through now that are really, there's questions like, what do I think of the new Pixel 6 phone by Google? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what I think of that. But I will say that the ideal temperature for fragrances is 16 degrees Celsius, more or less. Now think about that. Does your bathroom 16 degrees Celsius consistently? No. Or about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So 60 Fahrenheit for our friends that use Fahrenheit, and about 16 Celsius. So that's your temperature range. Now, if your bathroom goes from 30 degrees Fahrenheit to 60, you've got a problem, okay? If it goes from 4 degrees Celsius to 26 degrees Celsius, there's a problem. And let me tell you, a lot of bathrooms are in that zone. This is why I'd get that stuff out of there and just keep stuff that you're consuming and it's not going to be there long enough for it to go off, so to speak. But those fragrances that you hold near and dear to your heart and your arms and your legs and whatever else you spray the stuff, please keep them out of the bathroom. They don't deserve to be there. They deserve a better life, better treatment. Any other questions? Sarah says, small amounts you say? Stephen would... Yeah, I know. Actually, I thought of Stephen today. I shaved with tobacco. It was dirty. It was very dirty. It was dirty, very, very dirty. Who else do we have there? Georgia. Oh, Sophia. See a good business opportunity for and a good-looking dry container for every man's bathroom. A reverse humidor. You're talking my language, Sophia. What's going on here? What is going on? You mentioned humidor? And straight whisker branding. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll probably look into it. Yeah. It's interesting. You don't like the old Tupperware thing there, Sophia? Looks a bit naff. A bit cheap. Giorgio Dalani, love your show. Got to go. Ella, a nice Greek coffee. Well, yes. Okay. Thank you, Giorgio. Thanks for your compliments. Who would you have here? Mark. On the choice of fragrance, do you think maceration of perfumes delivers any real benefit depending on the quality of the product? Absolutely, yes. Whenever we have ordered product that was made for us specifically, we had to wait for it to macerate. And fragrance change. Look, we've got some testers. I've got some. We keep them, right? Got some testers here of product. The brand name is immaterial. It's not important because they all do it. Where I expected to smell something that I was familiar with, and I got some other totally different scent. Hadn't gone off, but it wasn't the same. And if I'm going to put that in a customer's hand and say, listen, have a smell of this, they'll say, I thought it was different a little bit. Fragrances change, right? There are chemical reactions going there, complex chemical reactions and molecular reactions going on constantly, which would change the olfactory architecture, if you like. So yes, I think it does make a difference. Now we've got Steve Jobs here. Is it the Steve Jobs? Yes. What do you think of the Henson Razor? I wish I could give you an opinion on that. I have not used it, so I don't know. I can't comment. Of those things of which I cannot speak, I remain silent, my friend. And that's probably a good time for me to leave the building. Thank you for watching this live. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your contributions. I hope that helped, Brad. I'm sorry that I couldn't get through all these comments. Now, this is kind of a thing now. I'm really enjoying this. Comments coming from all over the place. We've got Twitter comments and Facebook comments and YouTube comments. I'm really sorry that I can't get through it, but I'm also mindful of the fact that people's favourite TV shows are about to commence. It's time for me to go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.